Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Human Powered. I'm Jessica Becker, and I'm here with Jen Rubin, my co host, and we have a guest with us today named Qwantese Winters. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Hey, I'm really excited to have a chance to talk with you and along with Jessica Qwantese because um, for people who've been listening to this podcast, no, I used to be the executive director of Love Wisconsin. That program is a little bit on hiatus as we figure out, or Wisconsin Humanities figures out what to do in this period of time. And but it was the Love Wisconsin's 10-year anniversary, and so we looked through all of our data and sort of found the 10 of the stories that really were the most popular over the last 10 years. And one of them was yours. And what we were going to do, of course, is like refeature people and do an interview and all that. But so we thought, well, hey, we have a podcast still, so let's talk to Qwantese. So I think first I would just love to talk to you a little about your Love Wisconsin story. Um, you were at the time, you had just started with the PBS
hmm
gardening. Yeah,
hmm
and then so that was what really interested me and why I contacted you. But in contacting and interviewing you, you talked about the fact that you're a food doula, which was sort of fascinating. So I think first, if you could just kind of like ground us in like what was that project? What were you doing?
Yeah.
What was it like being part of this PBS, bringing gardening to everyday people?
hmm Yeah, so yes, I had a show, a web series with PBS Wisconsin called Let's Grow Stuff. And that came about through my experience as a farmer at a Troy farm. I met Emily Jilka, who is, someone who films for PBS. And she approached me after we had connected a few times about being the host of the show because she just really liked my personality and we got along and she thought I was funny and all the things. And I was like, oh, well, first of all, yes, I'm very interested. And also, surprise, surprise, I have a lot of experience in front of the camera. So, like, this is something that I would love to do. They kind of told me the guys at the show, and which was perfect for me because I also was someone at the time, even though I was a farmer, I had gotten into farming specifically so I could learn how to grow my own food. At the time, my hopes were that I was going to have my own farm one day, and then after a year of farming, I was like, oh, never mind. So I, worked on that show, wrote all of the scripts, and the basis of each episode was really just trying to find a principle within gardening that I could teach to beginners. And that was really fun for me. I really enjoyed doing it. One, because I think it's really important to be able to share the knowledge that you learn. And that's very much so what I was doing, was just learning things and then sharing them back to folks. But I also got to touch on things that weren't necessarily like popular gardening topics. Like everyone wants to know how to weed their garden, but nobody really wants to know like what weeds should they keep in their garden and how can weeds like be a friend to you and not just a foe. So I really enjoyed like digging into topics like that.
One of the cool things that I liked about the story that you shared, or sort of how the story was presented when we shared about your work on Love Wisconsin, was that it was very accessible, but you
Mhm.
also talked a lot about kind of how you came to that place of wanting to grow your own food, and that it was
Yeah.
connected with your desire to help connect with women in a really important phase of life.
Mhm.
And there's this quote in the story where you say, like, everyone deserves a beautiful birth, and
Mhm.
that you'd always been attracted to, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but this is from the Love Wisconsin story, like that you'd always been attracted to that kind of transitional, monumental time in a woman's life. So
Mhm. Yes.
maybe, to me, that kind of actually just gives me shivers. I
Mm.
just felt little goosebumps. Like,
Mm.
um, yeah, that's part of this evolution for you, right? Like
It
part of
is.
the
It
draw.
is. Yeah, birth is like Honestly, birth has been a part of my life since I was a child. I was obsessed with birth. I used to get in trouble because my parents would like catch me watching like birth documentaries and birthing shows and like looking at labors and stuff. And they'd be like, girl, you're 6. Please, like, you don't need to be watching this. But I was always intrigued by it. And at, that time of my life, I just assumed like, oh, I'm so obsessed with birth because I'm just like meant to be a mom, and I'm one day I'm going to be a mom, and that's like kind of where it stopped until I turned I was in my early 20s, and I lived in Minneapolis at the time and had met this woman. She was without shelter, pregnant, and we had become friends. And she disappeared for a little while and came back, and she had a baby with her. She had had her baby. And so I'm so excited for her. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that must have been so amazing. And just telling her all these feelings and thoughts that I had about birth. And then she told me about how horrible her birth was for her and how it was like one of the most terrifying moments of her life. And the whole time she was afraid that her baby was going to be taken from her. She didn't know if she was going to make it out alive, all the things. And from there, I like was trying to figure out what can I do to serve and folks who are being harmed during their birthing process, because I was so passionate about the fact that like birth is beautiful and everyone should have that right to feel the beauty and the power of birth. And I discovered doulas and what doulas were. And so I got into that work. A few years later, I got trained to be a doula, um, and had been doing that work for a while. And food kind of got like brought into my practice, because I was working on the farm one day and I was trying to figure out how can I approach my doula work in a way that's like unique to me. I was finding myself kind of already starting to feel burnt out in my doula work, by just going to births. And I was trying to figure out like, how can I do this in a way that's so natural that I'm able to sustain it? And as I was working on the land, I got this memory of my mom cooking for me and nursing me back to health, which she did when I had turned like 21. I got very sick, and she nursed me back to health, like I said, by cooking. And so that thought came to my mind. And then I just started thinking about how we don't, in our culture, American culture, we don't have any like specific rituals or processes for folks after they give birth regarding food and feeding them. You may hear of like a meal train or two, but for the most part, it's not ingrained in our culture. And so that's what I knew in that moment would be my role within birth work, is to bring the food part of it, to bring the just like the ritual through nutrition into this work. And yeah, I soon became known as the food doula. Folks sometimes they think that like a food doula, that's like a specific role, like you can go and get trained to be a food doula. No, it's just a name that I've been
Yeah.
given. One day it'd be cool to like create a training around my practice and like actually help people to get into becoming like a legit food doula. But right now it's just kind of like a moniker that I was given, and I really like I own it.
And it's just such a great, it's such an evocative term. It's like such a great term.
Mhm.
You know, one thing when I think about your Love Wisconsin story, that I'm just always interested in how we connect our personal stories to like our histories, where we come from, our family story. And so you talked about you come from the is it Gullah Geechee? Is that right?
Gullah Geechee.
Gullah Geechee tradition.
Mhm.
Um, and so could you talk a little bit about that, like what that is and like how that has sort of impacted how you go about this work?
Yeah. So the Gullah Geechee people are a group of Black folks who came here due to the transatlantic slave trade. They typically live along the islands of the South. So they're like in South Carolina, North Carolina, and sometimes all the way down into Georgia. But I learned about my connection to this group of people because my grandfather was Gullah Geechee. When I was growing up, all that I knew about him was that I did not really understand what he was saying. I always thought my grandfather had a speech impediment. And then I found out well into my adult years that he was actually speaking in a Gullah Geechee dialect. So I was like, oh, all this time, I thought, I just thought my, granddad wasn't like pronouncing his words right or something, and he had an accent. And so a lot of what I learned about them was through my grandmother, his wife, and she didn't have the funny thing about it is that like Gullah Geechee people actually have dealt with like a lot of marginalization as far as like their culture within like the Black culture. Um, this is coming from my grandmother, something that my grandfather struggled a lot with, was just the fact that like Gullah Geechee folks were kind of seen as like backwards kind of people, not intelligent. They didn't speak right. They were too country. So when he moved up north to Chicago, a lot of like his traditions, just he left them behind because it was seen as like the upwardly mobile thing to do. And so, of course, she didn't have much that she could share with me. So I just tried to learn as much as I could through online and documentaries and reading books and getting cooking books and making recipes from the cooking books. And something that I discovered is that there was a familiarity to this culture that I had, and there were ways that my grandfather was able to ingrain that like into my family without necessarily naming that it was Gullah Geechee. Even something as simple as how we eat our collard greens. He taught me to like eat my collard greens with my hands with some cornbread and eat it that way. That's a very Gullah Geechee thing to do. But then there were so many things that like I don't know, and still things that I feel like I don't know today. And I think that that's the difficult part for anybody who has a blood relation to a culture but wasn't raised in the culture. It's sometimes you feel like an outsider who's like trying to get all of the secrets and the ways, and it can be really hard to like find your in. And I feel like that's where I'm at right now, where I've learned all the things about my culture from the outside, and I'm really interested in learning like how to really make it a part of my lifestyle from the inside. My biggest connection and the way that I try to practice that connection as someone who wasn't raised in the culture is through cooking. I have dozens of Gullah Geechee cookbooks, and I frequent them often to inspire ingredients that I'm using, or to inspire a new recipe that I want to do, or to figure out a new way to cook something. Like there's a such thing as like a tomato casserole, and it's literally just like seasoned tomatoes that you bake. And I've never had tomatoes that way before, but because I learned it from the cookbook, I'm going to try that, and I'm going to eat it in ways that are traditional to the Gullah Geechee. I would also say a big part of Gullah Geechee culture is just living off of the land and being connected to it. So me even getting into farming in the first place and having that interest in growing food came from me learning about my Gullah Geechee culture, learning about herbalism. I only got interested in that because I was learning about the Gullah Geechee people and all the herbs that they use to, keep themselves healthy. I do feel that connection, and I try to draw from it whenever I'm in the kitchen and, making meals for moms and things like that.
So tell us about how you're making meals for moms.
So that right now I have a bowl of soul, which is a postpartum meal program that I founded. I have been doing this work for years, as early as 2019. But I was doing it by myself. I was using my own funds to pay for the ingredients. I was cooking out of my own home. And very quickly I realized this is not going to be sustainable. I have to have someone who's helping me to pay for the cost of running this. I need more hands to help. Otherwise, like it's just not going to be what I have envisioned it to be. And this year I connected with Reap Food Group, and they ended up being the folks who were, ready to partner with me on that. So they've been helping me with finding grants and sourcing my ingredients and all the things that come with that. But the program really just came from me experiencing the power of having someone cook you a warm meal when you are not well enough to do it yourself or don't have the energy levels to do it yourself. I've had that experience multiple times. My mother has cooked me back to health. I've had friends at the farm organize meal trains for me. I have PMDD, which is predysphoric menstrual disorder. So on a monthly basis, I'm dealing with flare-ups that are just sometimes it gets really hard. But learning from that experience of having people cook for me when I was down, that's like was the inspiration behind me bringing this type of service to mothers. So right now I specifically serve low income Black mothers who are either single, they're parenting alone, or you don't have to be parenting alone, but I do like to put a big emphasis on those who are low income and parenting alone because the need is like at the greatest and they have the least amount of options for finding people who could do something like this for them. I cook for them for 6 weeks straight. I cook meals that I was raised on. I do research because I serve, moms all within the Black diaspora. So I might get a mother who is Black, but she's Dominican. So I'll do research on like what are some traditional Dominican dishes, and then I just will like, tweak it so that it has like, an extra level of nutrition in it, or maybe I'll use a particular type of herb that I know is good for postpartum healing instead of what's traditionally added in there. So the program also it includes just like free workshops and cooking demos, just so that there's a level of empowerment in the program as well. I wanted to create something that didn't just look like, oh, here's the thing that you need and have a good day. I wanted to create the kind of program that people could come to it, they can get their need met, but then they also get community, which I'm doing through what I'm calling soul circles. They're kind of like restorative justice circles because I used to be a restorative justice coordinator for middle schoolers. So I've incorporated that into the process as well. Just a time for, moms in the program and in the community to gather together to talk about like different topics. But then we also have workshops and cooking demos as well, so that I can teach them some of the recipes of the foods that I'm making for them. I really just wanted to create what could feel a lot like a safe space and a home for marginalized mothers in Dane County. I used to be a caseworker for homeless pregnant women. And something that I noticed often was just the lack of community and care that these mothers that I was working with were getting. A lot of times they didn't have people that they could trust. They didn't have people that they could turn to and just simply ask for help, even if it was just a ride somewhere. And it blew my mind just like having that experience of even being a caseworker, to know that like they were going through such a transformative, and I don't even know the words. Like there's no reason why someone should be alone after giving birth to
Yeah.
a child. They don't have to worry for 6 weeks about who's going to show up for me, like how am I going to feed myself? How will I know what to do with my body and with my
Yeah.
baby and all the things? So, yeah.
The thing I really appreciated, enjoyed hearing you sort of like explained it all is I don't think it's like every day or every person who figures out how they can bring like their whole self to the work they do, right? And so just to hear you like, talk about the history from your grandparents, what you've learned gardening, what you've learned from your more like your social work and your
Mhm.
social justice perspective, and pull it all together and do this really amazing thing of sort of almost like mutual aid.
Mm,
It's quite great. It's very, I feel like it's what we need to be hearing about in this moment in time, right? Like when a lot of our public institutions are continuing to let people down, and
mhm,
how do we show up locally? What's our roadmap, right? And I feel like you're
mhm,
giving quite an amazing roadmap. So thank you
mm.
for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's funny because people often will ask like, how did you like even think to put all these things together? How did you get to this point? It's literally was just a discovery of myself. And once I discovered myself and discovered what were the things in life that really like make life feel worth living for me, the pieces kind of just fell together naturally. So while this is like, I'm sure that the moms that I get to serve feel like this a gift and they're thankful for it. It also feels like a gift to me and a blessing to me that I get to do this and like figure out more and more how to make it like my full-time thing. So yeah, it's a privilege.
When you were talking about the community building part of it, the chance that mothers have to meet each other, to talk, to learn cooking techniques, new
Mhm.
recipes, but also really probably decompress and relish that community building piece you've described. Can you give an example that you've been witness to of how this has impacted people or
So for the program, this will actually be the first time that I am doing like um a restorative justice circle type of setup, but I have witnessed the benefits of just being in a space with people who share your life experience, who share just the like the season that you're in life with, and that's just been through doing different workshops. So I've done a workshop before that kind of focused on just like the nutrients that you want to focus on during postpartum health. We watched a documentary together that kind of just talked about like our food choices and why like food can be your medicine, and not just like the medicine that we are prescribed at the doctors. And getting to see the moms like educate each other, talk to each other, share their experiences with each other, share what they learned from the class with each other was just really powerful. One, because I feel like in a lot of these settings, when you're serving low income folks, what I notice is that there tends to be like this very clear hierarchy where it's like, oh, I'm the teacher. I have all the wisdom. I have all the knowledge. Everything that I say is right. And you want to almost like put aside what you think you know and just like take in everything that I know. But what I like to do is create an environment where we're all teachers together. I'm just like coming up with like a itinerary of the things that we can talk about, but I really like to emphasize you taking the lead like in your own journey and not feeling like you can't bring your whole self into our environment. And I think that that's been like really beautiful for the moms that I have worked with. They've even like mentioned how good it feels to be around other women who look like them, or even folks who don't look like them. A lot of those spaces are mixed cultural spaces. So just even having folks who are also low income and you guys get to talk together about like how you want to start incorporating farro into your diet and replacing it for rice. Or there have been times where I've like had us all to talk about like our food relationships. What was the first food memory that you have? How did our parents raise us to think about food? And then each person just going around and sharing those experiences and them getting to hear from other people and seeing some of themselves in other people's stories, even if they come from a different culture or don't even speak their language. There's a sense of not even just empowerment, but like a boost of self-esteem, like creating a space where you feel important and you're going to be heard. I'm very lucky in that I have a beautiful community, and so I'm always trying to figure out how can I curate something like this for other people who don't have it. So that's like my main goal with doing the soul circles, is that I would just be able to curate this space for people to meet each other and to care for each other and to build deeper relationships, as well as walk out with information that's going to help them, down the line. Mm-hmm.
thank you. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you're changing the world. You're changing the world for these individuals, but also for the way that we all can experience what's right and what's good and how things should be, and setting up models that are, yeah, maybe based on some old practices and ancient traditions and
Mm-hmm.
good ways of doing things, but are also forward thinking in terms of what we need.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in the world going forward, what we
Yeah.
need in our communities. I really, really love listening to you describe it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I do as well. And I do want to say, it's a little bit like back to what you're saying earlier, and it's a little bit of a tangent, but it's a tangent that, I think we'll see if it works. But but this idea, like, sort of every culture has their food traditions, and some cultures have traditions around childbirth, whatever. And so I think, both of I'm on this sort of slightly strange bagel quest. And
Mhm.
I tracked down, well, other people as well have tracked down like the first written mention of the bagel. And it
Mhm.
happened in like 1610 in Poland, in Krakow, where there was sort of the largest Jewish community. And the
Mhm.
first writ it's in the I forget the exact term for it, but it's like in the, I don't know the word at the time, it's like in the regulations for
Mhm.
life. And so after a woman, right after childbirth, the regulations say a woman needs to be given a bagel like right after childbirth. Whether because the circle means something, or whether because it like was an important food for people, or whether because it was cheap, I don't know. But
Mhm.
anyhow, when I first learned about that, I was like, oh, that's like they're like food doulas, they're
Yeah.
they're like Qwantese. So anyway, so I do love food traditions, right? And when you think about like the group of women you're working with coming together, like nothing brings us together more than a food tradition. So
Exactly.
so yeah, like it's such a great way to start.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Are you modeling this off of other programs around the country that you've noticed or really,
No, and
yeah.
it's funny because I would love to do that because it would make all of this a lot easier. I am a very intuitive person, and so me even just starting this work was a very intuitive thing. And what I'm learning on this new season or journey is that my the intuition, my relationship with it just needs to be a little bit different because I have to build a lot of systems in order for this program to work the way I need it to. And I no longer get the privilege of just like cooking and, be enjoying being in the kitchen anymore. I really don't think anything that I am doing is new or even revolutionary because it's based off of what doulas, midwives, birth workers from ages ago were just already doing for each other. It just made sense. Someone gives birth, they're cooking for them, they're cleaning their home for them, they're, making sure that they always have somebody present with them. So, and for me, I feel like I'm just copying like wise women from before. I am a little surprised that I haven't found more like official programs for this type of work. But yeah, right now I'm kind of just like building the airplane as is that the saying, build the airplane as I fly it? That's what all of this feels like. Like, I feel like I'm just like, oh, I need to have a menu that I put out the week before I like make these meals for the moms. Oh, I should probably have an onboarding process that I'm doing, like, so I'm just like trying to figure things out as I
Yeah.
go and while still like trying to maintain that like that soulfulness and the
Yeah.
intuition that like has kept it going all these years.
Well, what I like about that, the way you described that, which is like it sort of reminds me of the first months of being a mother. You're like, wait, what do I do? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I have to feed him. What do I? So you're sort of pulling back on like
Exactly.
old knowledge, but it's new to you, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that you actually said that because I started writing the newsletter and I was mentioning in the newsletter, like the whole theme is just like setting the tone and building the foundation. And that's one of the things that I mentioned is that like I feel like I just took my baby home
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I don't
And
know
you're
what
like,
the
now
heck
what?
to do with this baby.
Wait, you mean they don't want to sleep? I thought they
Right.
like what's going on? Yeah.
Like what? It's not, my baby's not latching. What?
Yeah.
I'm confused. So that's like very much so what I feel like. I feel like okay, I have this thing now. Like, yeah, and I'm very excited. I'm so excited for it. But then there's also just like similar to having a child where there's this feeling of like, dang, am I gonna mess this up? I have those same feelings towards a bowl of soul and just like
Yeah.
wanting to make sure that I'm doing things right. So back to your question of like, am I modeling this off of something? No, but like I wish I could. Like I wish that there were some other program that kind of had already all this stuff figured out, and I could go to their person and be like, hey, can you mentor me? But I'm kind of just like creating it as I go. But that's
Yeah.
a big something that's important for me as I form all of this is creating like a very clear roadmap. I just want for mothers to be cared for, and anybody who wants to do that, I want to help them do that. So
Yeah.
as I'm building all of these things, that's something that I have in the forefront of my mind, is that one day there are going to be other people who want to do something like this on a smaller or bigger scale than I'm doing it. And I want to be able to give them the tools that they need so that they can. Yeah.
Yeah, so I really, feel like talking to you is just like a perfect conversation to be having, because one of the things we're trying to do with this podcast is sort of say to folks like there are people in our communities doing really impactful work, really like ground level, like relational impactful work. Some of the tools of the humanities are a part of this, and so this is why all this stuff matters, right? And so you're just like a great example of that. So thank you for taking the time to talk with us today.
Yes, of course. It's my pleasure.
You're doing amazing work. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wow, what an inspiring person Qwantese is, that I think you and I just got to sit back and be a little bit in awe. And it was fun to see that she was joining us from the kitchen, actually, the official work kitchen of the local co-op that rents out commercial space. So that was really nice to see her team behind her actually cooking while we were talking.
Yeah, that's great. And then I found out that like one of my daughter's best friends from high school is on her team. So I liked that. And of course, I would like to be fed by her at some point in time or cook with her or something. Like, I just feel like the way she rolls in like the long-standing tradition that her grandfather brought and what she learned from that and how she like rolls that in with so many things. Like I'm sure while she cooks, I mean, she's got a cooking show in her future. She wants it probably. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, we'll put some links in the show notes, both to the PBS show that Qwantese used to host, as well as the story on Love Wisconsin's big archive. There are stories, so many stories. If you want to discover more inspiring people around the state, check out the Love Wisconsin archive. We'll put a link to Qwantese's story there. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Chrissy Widmeyer, who does our editing. And thanks for being here with us on this journey.
Great. See you in a couple weeks.